I have just heard What the Dickens by Eamonn O'Brien, and I have no idea what he's talking about. I'm Linda Shaw, and I'm here to find out what he means by What the Dickens, because he says it's a secret that every corporate storyteller should know. No, I don't know what that means. Go on, Eamonn, over to you.
I made you want to know what happens next. And actually, that's the secret. Let me explain. So Charles Dickens, of course, everybody knows who he is these days, but when he started out, he used to produce his stories in newspapers because people didn't have the money to buy books. And the way that he got people hooked into it, as every single time he finished a segment, he had to have you wondering what's going to happen next. And of course, that's exactly what, and some people, when they talk about episodes, when they talk about, connecting one thing to the other, if you were like me and you remember Batman and Robin, they were always in dreadful peril. Bang, bang, pow. What's going to happen to them in their dastardly situation next week? So, so this is really, really important, because when your audience is hooked into this notion of what's going to happen next, they are able to remember a lot more than you might imagine about what you've been talking about the next time you revisit that topic. I have a pal who is a professor, Radvansky, over in the University of Notre Dame, and he talks about, for example, when you watch Netflix. Have you ever done this? When you're watching an episode and you say, oh, that's really, really good, and he said, right, I'm only watching the one. And then you get to the end, and the next thing you say, oh, I just watched the start of the next. And then 4 hours later, you say, what do you like? I can't believe that you did that. But that is the elixir, that's the power. But what also happens is that you then inject yourself more into the story and thinking about, what would I have done in that situation? And it feels blinking real, which is a question I have for you. Why? Why does it feel so real?
Well, to be honest with you, the brain doesn't really know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. So when we're listening to a story, we're putting ourselves into that story and how we would react. But the key that you're just talking about there is that you're stimulating curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And by stimulating curiosity, that's the way we learn. So if you have got something like a soap opera on the television that is handling this really tricky story that is could be real, something like murder or kidnapping, something really big and huge that maybe the viewers are not, well, most people are not exposed to, they would still be curious to know, well, actually, how would I react to that? How would I respond to that? Oh, that's the way I do it if I ever did see somebody beaten up in an alleyway. Maybe that is the way I do something, whatever. So they're learning from the story. And of course, that's how we learned from years and years gone by when we were still at the cave mouth. It was those stories that actually were the only way we learned. So the curiosity thing is key. Now I get what the Dickens meant.
Who knew? But actually, but now you see, folks, you do. And actually, it's really, really important, because you always want to have people wanting to have more. And because that actually causes them to inject, to create greater meaning, to attach more emotional connection to what you're doing. And that's powerful stuff.
And I tell you something else as well, that's very an interesting point, because when we are wanting to know more, and when we're wanting more, in inverted commas, it actually could save the life of villages. For instance, say way back hundreds and hundreds of years ago, if a village's crops were failing and starvation was actually a real problem that they might be facing during the winter, it's the young, able-bodied people that went out over to other fields, over to other villages, over to different places that they knew nothing about, to spread, to bring back food to their village, but also that would make them learn a bit more about other people, or indeed what is beyond that horizon. So that curiosity, that needing to want to know more, is actually a major part of our survival.
It is. And particularly if you want people to change what they're doing today, if you can create greater intrigue, guess what that does for your ability to bring people on board?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Good old Dickens.
Yeah, and on that bombshell, at the end of this episode, tune in for the next episode when you learn.
You have to tune in to find out.